Unisex toilets in South Africa's schools have not yet been given the go-ahead, according to the country's Department of Basic Education. The Department of Basic Education found itself at the center of a storm last week after media reports that it was considering implementing unisex toilets at public schools.
Well, some citizens and some political parties launched a petition opposing this move. But the department is hit back, saying the matter was blown out of proportion as media reports were based on an initial draft discussion document. According to the department, the document is still under review and the final draft of the guidelines will only be published next year. Joining us now to discuss this concept is Professor Anthony Brown, head of the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of Johannesburg. Good morning to you, Doctor, or Professor, I beg your pardon, and thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Great. So let's go straight into it now. There has been a quite significant debate about the concept of unisex toilets. Are people justified to be upset about this idea, and why?
It is very important to understand that our school community and our school environment has been very heterosexual, or heteronormative in the way in which education has been provided. So the notion of non-heteronormativity and sexual diversity is quite a challenge for many of the South African citizens. This is besides the fact that sexual and gender diversity is acknowledged, affirmed, and protected within the South African Constitution. But as part of the South African transformation to create an inclusive learning environment, this journey to provide inclusive schooling environments for young children with gender non-conforming identities is a rather sticky one. It's a challenging one. It's one that the society still has to get used to because it confronts, it disrupts what we have known as to be normal. And what the Department of Education is saying, it has a mandate towards the inclusion, care, and safety for all learners, regardless of background, regardless of sexual orientation, and regardless of gender identity. And so that is what's causing the current uproar and the storm that you have noticed in the media since last week.
And how would you say that people have reacted to the updates on this information? We're hearing that this is not final yet. It's just discussions from the draft that has been made. How would you say that the reactions have been? Are there more people in support of this or not?
I think, thank you for that question, but I think the response is rather balanced. There are those who are in full support of young people to be catered for in this way. And I need to say this, that the singling out of bathrooms is an aspect of the guidelines. It's not all the conditions that are and will be provided within a schooling context to make sure that it is inclusive, safe, and enabling for all learners. So there are those who are in support of it, and there are those who are not in support of it. And what has happened when those ones who are not in support released these comments, I think it was rather irresponsible because I have a copy of the draft. The draft guidelines is indicating that they do not want to abolish the single-sex bathrooms. The indication that these reports that were released by certain groups in a political sphere and in the social sphere indicated that the DBE wants to abolish single-sex bathrooms. That's not the case. The Department of Basic Education is saying, in addition to the single-sex bathrooms, we need to create bathrooms that would cater for gender non-conforming and transgender learning, transgender identifying learners. That is what it says, and therefore we saw the reaction. So I think we should allow for the DBE, for the drafts to go through the necessary consultation processes, and then make a statement and make decisions based on the outcome there. And that we should also allow that the information be released in a responsible and accurate manner, because in the manner in which it was released was inaccurate. That is not what is written in the draft guidelines.
All right. Let me just ask quickly, wouldn't this sound quite new to some South Africans, being that this has not been put forward in a long while? And just as my colleague had asked earlier on, how are many people taking this? Most importantly, currently that there hasn't been any approval. People are already reacting to this differently. What's the impact on the society? Let me go straight to that question. What impact do you think this will have on the society, on sexual orientations and the likes?
First of all, those with diverse sexual orientations, the impact for them would be a safer environment. It will be an environment where they feel welcome. It will be an environment where they are acknowledged. South Africa has seen and experienced a very terrible experience of homophobic and transphobic violence that have led to suicide of many young people because of bullying and violence. And these single-gendered bathrooms have been a very common space where these kind of activities of discrimination has taken place. And so we are thinking that we welcome this kind of resources and facilities that will be made available by the DBE to make sure that young people feel welcome. But there is certainly from another group of society where they feel anxious because issues around the rape culture and GBV in our country is quite a major concern. And so the argument was, would these bathrooms not then motivate and create an opportunity to facilitate this kind of opportunities and unacceptable behavior? And we are saying, in fact, that these kind of the new suggested bathrooms, the gender neutral bathrooms, will create more safety, and that is what research has shown.
Let's talk about protection of these children in the schools. What we find, I mean, I was able to watch some of the interviews that the young students had granted, and some of them had talked about not just being attacked in beyond the bathrooms, even in, going to their wardrobes and seeing hateful letters. One talked about receiving death threats. How much protection would you say the schools are offering these students? And how are the students reacting to the information about the gender neutral bathrooms?
At the moment, the situation around the offering of gender neutral bathrooms is not out in the public domain. As we have said, this is still under discussion and consultation with internal stakeholders. So this was a leaked document, and then the public has responded to that. But within these proposed guidelines, there's a whole systemic support system. This is coming from school leadership, from what we call the parents organization, the SGB School Governing Board. It has the LRC, it has the life orientation teachers, it has the school-based support team. So it is a systemic response to create an inclusive environment and a supportive environment. And so this is not just a bathroom issue, this is a systemic response to make sure that these young people who do not conform to diverse gender orientations and expressions and sexual orientations are catered for, supported for, and are safe within the school. And that is what the guidelines is trying to create, a safe environment. And now I need to also indicate this, that when you think of these guidelines, they are not new. These guidelines are basically a tool to support the existing policies and legislation that's in the country. This country for the past 2 decades and more has created a safe space in terms of policy, but then there were no specific tools that could guide educators, and that is the purpose of the guidelines, to give specific expression on how educators can create this enabling environment. And as I said, it is systemic, it is different entities in the school that would create a supportive environment.
All right. I mean, we've said a whole lot, and I'm sure that if time permits us, we would have a lot of questions to ask. I mean,
Absolutely.
there are questions where many have thought about the issue of safety, just as Olive has mentioned, the issue of health implications as well, looking at you have different genders here looking to share and you also have the issue of acceptance in particular. But one key question I'd like you to answer in very short seconds is it mandatory that all students use this service, or will there be other services provided for others who choose not to use this service?
This would be optional for those students who choose to use it, and those who are comfortable with the single-sex bathrooms will continue using the single-sex bathrooms. And just in a nutshell, many of these young people would have come to school and would not have used these ablution services because they were uncomfortable, and this has led to other health factors. And we are saying we've got a responsibility to the health and care of all learners, and so this is an additional opportunity to make sure that all children are catered for inclusively, and that their health are supported within the schooling context.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Anthony Brown, for joining us all the way from South Africa.
Thank you.